The Pacific is heating up, and India could feel the heat in more ways than one. A powerful El Nino is building, and scientists say this could be the strongest event in more than a century. The Met Office says Pacific waters could rise to more than 3 degrees Celsius above normal, something which scientists describe as unprecedented in modern records. And now, the heat may not stop there. The current forecast suggests 2027 could overtake 2024 as the hottest year ever recorded globally. So, what does this mean for India? A tougher time for monsoon and potentially tougher time for the farmers. The Met Office says El Nino is already contributing to below normal rainfall in India. The IMD expects the full monsoon season to be around 90% of the long period average, potentially the weakest in 11 years, and the impact could stretch beyond this year. Scientists warn that Rabi crops could take a hit, while heatwave next year could further pressure on agriculture. El Nino is a natural climate phenomena caused by unusually warm Pacific waters. But this time, the numbers are raising eyebrows. The forecast suggests that Pacific could reach a staggering 3.9 degrees anomaly in November. For now, scientists are watching the Pacific closely because if these forecasts hold, the next big heat story may not be just about temperatures, it could be about rainfall, food, and farms too. I'm being joined by Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President of the CDEP Research. So, my first question to you is, how seriously should India take the warning of a potentially record-breaking El Nino?
Extremely seriously. In fact, this is something that CDEP research has been talking about for more than 10 years. We have published umpteen number of articles where we are saying that, look, India being a smaller player in the climate change issue, we should look at how to mitigate the impact of climate change. And one of the key repercussions of the heat increase that you're talking about is that it will completely disrupt our agricultural pattern. As we are all well aware, Indian agriculture is dependent on monsoons, on natural irrigation, and not based on grid-based irrigation, which means that if there is no rain, then there is no crop. Or if the rains happen but at the wrong time, which is what we have seen happening in the last couple of months, then when the sowing season happens, there is no rain. When the cropping season happens, there is rain and it damages the crop. It's going to create havoc in this country. We have seen, multiple cases in this country where there have been food shortages year after year. Fortunately, for the last 40, 50 years, we have not faced that situation. But we have faced, last time when there was a big El Nino effect, which was in 2015, we did see that there was a significant deficiency in rainfall, which led to a reduction in the crop yield. And that was the second year consecutively where there was an impact on crop production. So both 2014 and 2015, we had a challenge in terms of crop production because of the El Nino effect. Now, the El Nino effect that we are facing now is far bigger than what we had in 2014 and the subsequent 2015 year. At that time, the increase in temperature was about 2 degrees. And this year, as you have rightly put, it's about 3.9 degrees. And it's supposed to get even more in the next summer of 2027. So we have a situation where in consecutive cropping seasons, we will have a discrepancy in the rainfall. We'll have a discrepancy in terms of the general heat pattern, which will all have an impact on how much of food we'll produce. And that is a very, very serious issue because we don't even know what will happen in 2028. And therefore, if there are 3, 4 consecutive years where our cropping pattern gets disrupted, then we need to start looking at what is the alternative we need to do and do that very, very immediately. Do keep in mind that entire civilizations in the subcontinent had vanished because of climate change. The Harappan civilization is now well established, vanished because of climate change. And even the Roman civilization took a hit only when there was a climate change and therefore an impact on cropping, which weakened that civilization. So we need to take it very seriously that we will be facing a food issue because of the climate change, and we need to take immediate steps to mitigate that.
Would a weaker monsoon significantly impact India's farmers and the food security? You mentioned the word alternative. Can you expand on that? What alternative are we looking for, especially when we are saying that, it could be next year that farmers get impacted, that there is a hindrance to the food security of India?
Yeah, if there is an impact on food availability right now, we look at a food stock of about 6 months, right? So if there is no cropping happening or there is a reduction in food production through the normal ways, through the natural agriculture, then there are only two things we can do. One, we need to store more food. Second, we need to find alternate mechanisms of making food. If you look at the first step, we have been storing food for only about 6 months, roughly speaking. We have a range of about 20 to 40 million tons of food being stored. That needs to be significantly upscaled. We need to have more silos created as part of the food storage infrastructure, and therefore store food which will stay with us for at least 2 to 3 years. Now that's immense amount of investment, and understand that. And there is immense amount of infrastructure investment, and not just the holding cost of food, but that's the cost we need to bear for food security. The writing is in the wall. It has been on the wall for last 10, 15 years that we will reach a situation where there will be a very significant climate change. Areas which are food baskets will turn into deserts. Deserts such as Rajasthan will turn into food baskets because of excessive rainfall. While this change is happening, our farming will get massively impacted. And therefore, we need to store more food, which is point number one in terms of ensuring that there is no food shortage and there is food security. Point number two, how do we get alternate sources of food? With the current science that we have and the current technology we have, we can actually manufacture food in the factory. And that's essentially replicating the cells which constitute food, and therefore replicate meat, replicate vegetables, and create some kind of a food source which provides us the nutrition that we need. It may not be the exact equivalent of what the farm based food is, but it is a mechanism of at least providing nutrition to millions and millions of people. Now, do keep in mind that if India has food shortage, it under the circumstance that the rest of the world will also have a climate change, it is not really possible to think that 16% of the global population, which is the Indian population, will somehow get fed by the rest of the world. The rest of the world will also be going through their own challenges for food production, and therefore that will lead to conflicts happening, and we will be in a very tragic situation where we will not find food in the rest of the world for feeding the 1.5 billion people that we have in this country. And therefore we need to make enormous amount of immediate investments into science and technology to manufacture food in the factory rather than going through the field based farming that we now have. And this is something we have been talking about for a decade and a half now.
Well, sir, so can India's weather forecasting and the farm policies help reduce the impact of these extreme climate events? Like you're talking about food safety and you said, we need to prepare for this. But also, can it reduce the impact of the climate events? Because this is not a problem that is going to be solved in the near future. We are saying that 2027 is going to be the hottest year, and what if 2030 is even hotter than that? And what if it comes to human survival at last?
Yes, the farm policies per se is geared towards helping out the farmers. It's geared towards ease of doing farming, but is it geared towards creating more food? That's a different story altogether. Government policies has been geared towards ensuring that the farm productivity goes up. But if there is no water, or there is erratic rainfall, how will government policies really help? Now, of course, within the existing realm of science and technology, whatever can be done and which can be promoted through the government policies should be done. For example, better education of the farmers, the farmer call centers, the insurance that the government has rolled out for the farmers. So all of them are very, very positive. Even the attempt to change how procurement happens in a manner that is beneficial to the farmers was also made, which somehow did not go through eventually because of the protests that erupted by the farmers who misunderstood the details of that particular legislation. So attempts have been made, but we are in a situation where we need to do something dramatically different. Now, it is possible to build up enormous amount of storage infrastructure in the next 4 or 5 years. That's in the realm of possibility. It'll also lead to a lot of jobs happening. It'll also lead to a lot of consumption of cement and iron and so on and so forth, and would lead to a lot of logistics being triggered in order to ensure that there is food storage happening. So that's something that is not a futuristic thing that can be done right now. Even the second part of it, where we are saying that there is factory based food that can be done, it is possible to create that food, except that it's more expensive than regular food, which is where the government policy needs to step in and say, we will subsidize that kind of production so that the production scales up. Once the production scales up, it's able to compete with the regular natural food based sources. And therefore, that's where the government policies should be coming in. So the technologies that I'm talking about are not futuristic. They are 10-year-old technologies. There's nothing new about those technologies. They're not economically viable when we compare it with the food coming from the farms, and which is where the government needs to step in, just like they do for regular manufacturing, where they're providing PLI benefits, they're providing subsidies. Similar kind of benefits needs to be given for factory-based food production, so that we are able to master the technology, scale it up, and be ready with the possibility of large scale food being manufactured in the factory, so that we are not in a situation where our enormous population starts starving.
Well, sir, before I let you go, one last and a big question. You mentioned multiple times about government policies, about the farm laws, etc. Okay, the government needs to do this, this, this. I come from Bihar, which is mainly an agricultural based society. There's a lot of ignorance when it comes to things like climate change. So, do you think that we as a society are even aware that the hottest year is approaching soon? There's the biggest El Nino is here. We are on the brink of food shortage. So, do you think that in general the society is ignorant, and that is why we are facing most of the issues?
You're absolutely right. In fact, you have taken a great example of Bihar. Bihar, along with Bengal, were one of the richest in terms of agricultural produce for a very, very long time, and in fact continues to be so from a natural perspective. If you look at, let's say, just the jute production, last summer the jute actually shot up by one extra meter because the rain continued for a longer time. Now, one would believe that that's a great thing. If the jute became taller than what it should be, then it's a great thing. And it happened because of climate change. There was extra month of rainfall. So actually, the rainfall got delayed. My bad. The rainfall got delayed by a month, so the jute grew by one more meter. And what happens subsequently is that when the rainfall happens, the retching of the jute happens, but the jute becomes brittle because it has grown taller. And therefore, the jute's quality goes down, its value comes down tremendously. And so we're already facing massive amount of impact because of climate change. The jute farmers are facing that problem. And similarly, that problem is going to spread across multiple crops and across multiple regions. Unfortunately, the farmers kind of blamed it on the specific issue that the rainfall got delayed. But the rainfall has got delayed because of climate change, just as what happened in this year, where the rainfall happened at the wrong time. Even then, we have deficit, but the deficit came down because the rainfall happened, but it happened at the wrong time. So it doesn't matter when the rainfall happened. And therefore, the farmers needs to understand, and there is no other way but to change technology, quickly get our agricultural experts to figure out how we can do farming differently so that we can leverage the change in climate and do the planting at a different time in a different way and with the different crops, and get that learning to the farmers very, very quickly. And it has to happen at a very high frequency, not just year after year, but month after month, because all the predictions of climate change are not 100% accurate. We don't know what exactly will be the impact of climate change. And therefore, based on the extant data and the empirical data collected, our agricultural scientists needs to work overtime to provide that knowledge base back to the farmers, just the way you were talking about.
Well, exactly. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. And it remains to be seen what could a prolonged El Nino mean for India's crop and agriculture next year.